All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Forrest Hecker. I'm the Florida-Friendly Landscaping Community Educator for Sarasota County, and I'll be talking to you about strategies for a pollinator-friendly yard. So for this presentation, we're really going to start from the ground up and we'll talk about why that's so important. But a lot of people, they have turf grass in their landscape already. Um, but a lot of times it's not necessary. You should only really have turf grass if it's providing a function in the landscape. If you have kids playing out in the yard all the time, if you have a dog and you need to walk it out in the grass, some people have bee allergies, so they can't have flowering ground covers. Turf grass might be the best ground cover for you, and lots of cases, even if it is the best ground cover for you, people are mowing it way too short and frequently, and they're not following IFAS recommendations for care. So you should be mowing at the optimal mowing height, which are listed here for the different types of grass. This is going to lead to a healthier grass where it's going to be greener, it's going to require less chemicals, there's going to be less disease issues, less patches, and it will also, if you're not scalping it all the way down to the ground, it's going to provide more shelter for insects and pollinators to hide around in your landscape. But when it comes to ground covers, my big area of interest is alternative ground covers or even just mixed mowable ground covers. So just adding in things like perennial peanut, the orange flower you see on the left, or sunshine mimosa, the native pink flower you see on the left picture. These are two very ornamental ground covers that mix very well into grass. You don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars redoing your yard. You can plant these two plants and they're just going to spread into your landscape. They both provide really great nectar and pollen resources for our pollinators, and the sunshine mimosa is a native plant, and it's also the host plant for a little dainty sulfur. So I have a blog series called the Lawn Ornament Blog Series where I cover many of these weeds that people commonly already have in their lawn, and they can provide a lot of boons to our pollinators and local ecosystem if you leave them or even let them start to outcompete the grass. So when it comes to your landscape, we've already touched on it in some other presentations, but biodiversity is key. If you have just one plant in your landscape, like some people, they only have turf grass. They don't even have like a tree in their yard. I see many people in neighborhoods have that. They'll just have a St. Augustine lawn. There's very few insects that can utilize that, and the more species of plants you put into your lawn, your landscape, or as trees, the more different insects will be able to utilize those plants. So the most common relationship people think of is how butterflies need specific host plants, but a lot of different insects need specific host plants beyond just butterflies. So you really want to focus on native plants. Florida-friendly plants are usually plants that are considered drought tolerant, things that don't need lots of chemicals or fertilizer and are going to thrive well. But when it comes to promoting our native wildlife and our native pollinators, we really want to focus on the native plants. And in particular, there's things called keystone species, which are the cornerstones of the entire ecosystems in our area of Florida. And so there'll be a link shared out to you with the different keystone species for Florida. Also, when you're putting in plants, I see lots of people just buy one wildflower, one small plant, and just put it in. You really should try to propagate that wildflower when it seeds, try to get a grouping of them because the pollinators, when they're going around looking for resources, they really want to not fly around a lot. And in the case of like honeybees and things, they'll go back to the hive when they find really great foraging area and be like, they'll communicate it to the rest of the hive. They're like, go here. There's a lot of plants grouped together that are perfect for this time of year. And yeah, grouping plants together does help, but biodiversity is still key. A really important thing in your landscape is to really try to make it three-dimensional. So a lot of people have what I call two-dimensional landscape. It's just going to be turf grass and a tree or two. Um, every single leaf, every single branch is surface area in the landscape, and it's going to really exponentially increase the amount of habitat you have in your landscape when you have trees, you have canopy trees, subcanopy trees, you have shrubs, you have different perennials in the landscape, you have different ground covers. All these different layers in the landscape are providing different habitats and so a lot of pollinators and insects are going to move up and down these layers throughout their life cycle. So like butterflies, when they're in their larval form, they're caterpillars, they're not flying around. They can sometimes, there's a lot of skippers that will be on different species of grass. And then it's not until they're adult where they're flying around using shrubs to land on and trees to land on. So create those layers in the landscape. A really big one, in my opinion, is wood. Wood is the backbone for a lot of insect life in our natural areas. Snags are what are called dead trees that you see pictured on the right. These really provide tons of shelter and resources for things like a lot of carpenter bees, a lot of native bees. They need this wood for part of their life cycle. And there's many other insects and pollinators that need the wood. And I will say you see pictured on the right, there's a little bee hotel. These have become quite popular in recent years, and I will say I saw them. They seemed expensive, and I never was a believer in them, but one was donated to our office. We installed it, and it really always is a hive of activity. There's all different types of native bees and wasps utilizing it. And now the woodpeckers have figured out that it's like a lunch buffet, and it's just a whole ecosystem is around just this habitat that has lots of little nooks and crannies for the different larval stages to hide in. And you can also just put in logs into your landscape. If you come out to our extension office, we have quite a few just logs used as borders, used as landscape features, and they are great for insects to utilize. Another really key part of a landscape is providing water. Water, especially in the dry season, is an extremely valuable resource. We have altered and drained so many of our wetland areas, concentrated water. And if you can really create like put in bird baths and other water features into the landscape, you'll be surprised on not only the birds and the wildlife that come in, but the pollinators. Right now, in the heat of the summer, it's not uncommon to see butterflies. They'll come down to mud they'll get electrolytes, and they don't really need nectar so much because, or they don't need water so much because they get a lot of water through nectar, but they're coming down getting electrolytes and wet soil. You'll also see honeybees in these hot days. They'll come by the hundreds to a water source, a bird bath. They'll get water, they'll take it back to their hive, and they actually have a form of AC where they release the water when they get back to the hive to cool it down. They beat their wings while they're releasing it. It's a very cool thing to witness. Another really important thing for many pollinators is leaving some natural areas of the landscape, like leaving leaves that fall off a deciduous tree, or leaving a patch of soil that is just naturally, it's just always, nothing grows there. It's sandy. Maybe you just leave it there as a little patch of sand because you'll be amazed. There's a lot of minor bees and other native bees that need this bare soil to create little tunnels and pupate until the next year. So leaving little patches of bare soil, leaving the leaves as a layer instead of in the landscape instead of bagging it up and getting rid of it are both great ways to help our pollinators and insects and overwinter and survive year after year. This has already been touched on a couple times before, but try to reduce and eliminate pesticides until only to use what is necessary. So follow that IPM strategy, those IPM strategies that were already touched on. Only use chemical controls as a last resort, and try to avoid those regular broad spectrum treatments. I know we all have neighbors that do it, and they every single week there's like a new sign out in front of their house where it says, "Don't touch the lawn because it's been sprayed." Unfortunately, it's just part of our communities, and yeah, we want to try to limit that to just treating problems as they arise instead of just treating things on a regular weekly schedule. Another really a growing problem that I see in our local areas is just excessive lights. So many lights, they use LED lights, solar powered lights. They're so cheap. They're so easy to put all over your landscape. But you really should think about what they're doing to our pollinators at night. There's a lot of plants that only will open their flowers during the nighttime because they've co-evolved with nighttime moths and other pollinators. Artificial lights can really disrupt the navigation of these pollinators. It can disrupt their mating, their feeding. So if you do use lights, try to only use ones that are on motion sensors. Warmer colored bulbs are less attractive to um, the moths. So using like amber and red colors are less attractive, and also trying to make sure they're not like uplighting things. Use downward directed fixtures. That's going to minimize the unnecessary light pollution that is occurring. So that was my presentation on strategies for pollinator-friendly yards. I do want to remind you that your local extension office is a really great resource to reach out to. We have so many more classes. I teach an hour-long class on butterflies, attracting hummingbirds, just an hour for each one of these different pollinators. So sign up for one of these classes at your local extension office and just utilize us as a resource. We have so many things to provide. So I want to talk to you about how to participate in the pollinator census, and we'll go over some of the key components of the census so you can either participate in a local group or by yourself. So the biggest reason, why should you take part in this survey, the pollinator census? The biggest reason is it's a citizen science project that we already talked in the other presentation about the importance of citizen science, getting people involved, and just getting a lot of data that the scientific community can utilize. This pollinator census has three major goals beyond just getting people involved with citizen science. It's to create sustainable pollinator habitat. So a lot of these people that are taking part in the census are then going out, they're learning about plants that are really like maybe they sit in front of a tea bush when they're participating in a pollinator census and they see how amazing that bush is at bringing in bees. And then they go home and create more sustainable pollinator habitat by putting in that native plant that is so great for bees. It's also increasing the entomological literacy of our citizens. So just beyond, oh, that's a bug. We want to educate people about the different types of pollinators. Like a lot of people, before they take part in this census, they're like, flies, pollinators? They have no clue that they are active pollinators until they're out there being mindful and looking at a plant and seeing what's landing on it. And then it is the core part of the census is to generate useful data about pollinator populations. So we can spot trends about different types of the different categories of the pollinator population, see if they're declining or if they're affected by weather or how do honeybees influence native bee populations. These are all things they're trying to look at in the data. So the first step to really get involved is to get informed. So you've already made a great big step by signing up for this the speaker series, but there's other ways to get informed. If you like the IFAS Great Florida Pollinator Census, there's going to be regular updates leading up to the census about different places that are holding counts and tips, tricks, and things like that. While I'm talking about tips and tricks, there's also the pre-recorded video for mastering the pollinator census. This is put out by the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. It really goes in depth over the data sheet and how to categorize the different things you'll see. We're going to go over it briefly in this presentation, but watching this YouTube video is a great way to get it cemented into your brain. And then finally, just going through the Great Southeast Pollinator Census website. There's a lot of materials and information on that website to help you fill out the data sheet. So I wanted to highlight two local counts that are being held by 3 of the 5 speakers today. There might be others in our local community, but these are the ones associated with UF IFAS. So on Friday, August 22nd at 10 a.m., there's going to be one at the Tampa Family Health Center's Community Gardens in Hillsborough County. There'll be a link shared out in the chat to register for that, but I will say I think it might be sold out. I was going to let Tia touch on that at the end of the presentation. To speaking about events that aren't sold out, the Friday, August 22nd event at Shamrock Park in Venice, which is in Sarasota County, we do still have quite a few spots that me and Jackie are hosting that one. But you can also do this pollinator census all by yourself. You can do it in the comfort of your own garden, or you can go to a public garden and just find any flowering plant. And on August 22nd or August 23rd, you can do a local pollinator census at that location. So let's talk about how you do that. So the big components of doing a pollinator census data sheet is you're going to print out the data sheet or you're going to receive it in the mail. You're going to find a flowering plant that you like and you see pollinators going to it. You're going to identify that flowering plant. So try to go to a place that uses signs in the landscape. So like our demonstration gardens at Twin Lakes Park or Shamrock Park, we have signs for almost every plant. And you're gonna write down the name of that plant. You're gonna pull out your phone or a timer and you're gonna set 15 minutes. That's how long each data sheet is gonna be running for. And then you're going to use the printed reference handout to identify pollinators as they land, or I'll talk more about the categories on the next slide, and hopefully you can memorize the categories and what they look like. And yeah, so the data sheet you can see is almost, it's right there on the right. The 8 categories are bumblebees, carpenter bees, honeybees, small bees, wasps, flies, butterflies, moths, and other insects. So I will have to say I did not know the difference between bumblebees and carpenter bees until Jackie taught me, and she used the phrase shiny heinies for carpenter bees and fuzzy fannies for bumblebees. So if you look at a bumblebee, it's going to be a larger bee, larger than a honeybee, and it's going to have a fuzzy abdomen. So that's the rear component of the bee, the fanny. And then the carpenter bee, they're also bigger. In most cases, they're bigger bees than honeybees. Their abdomen is not going to be hairy. Usually, you can see it being shiny. So that's the phrase "shiny hiney" comes into play. Honeybees, they're pretty much the most common bee that you see. The European and African honeybees. They're the ones that we have domesticated. They have large colonies. They're generalist pollinators, so they go to pretty much any flower out there collecting pollen or nectar. Out of our hundreds of native bees, a lot of those are tiny bees that are going to be like leaf cutting bees or minor bees. You don't have to know the many different families and hundreds of different species. If it's a small bee, just mark it as a small bee. Wasps, they are their own category. Then flies, as we've already talked about, they're unknown. They're their own category too. Butterflies, you're gonna run into lots of butterflies, hopefully. There's some day flying moths, so just put them in the same category, or maybe you do a after hours night census and you can track the moths. We get lots of sphinx moths in our gardens after hours. And then if there's something like a beetle that lands on one of the flowers, you mark it as a other insect, or if you can't identify what it is, just mark it under other insects. Once you have filled out the data sheet, if you're taking part at our census event, we'll handle the data sheets once you've filled it out. Then you will upload it into the University of Georgia website and they tabulate the data. As I said, that data is very important, very useful and important. I will say that this is one of the maps that I pulled up from Tia's presentation on the data, but this is the number of pollinators observed per counter per a county, because this census isn't statewide in every county. It isn't at every IFAS office yet, but maybe someday it will be. But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting to see how some areas of the state had a lot more pollinators per 15-minute interval than others. Sometimes this was based on the species of plant. Sometimes it lined up with like if a county had a lot of agriculture or a lot of wilderness natural areas. So very interesting to look at that data. So to end the presentation, I just wanted to have a open forum. If you've had any questions to any of the presenters, type them into the chat now. If it's a frequently asked question, maybe we can say it out loud. So, and then I was gonna let Tia mention her event in Hillsborough if there was any details about it.
Sure, thanks, Forrest. And there is a question in the chat. So when people are doing the pollinator count, do they need to limit it to a single plant, or can we observe a group of them, such as a black-eyed Susan with a pentas?
It's try to do one plant, but if it's a cluster of plants where you can't tell where one ends and one another one begins, like maybe it's a bunch of coreopsis. Try to make it a manageable, like 2 feet by 2 feet section. So the official way they do this and the scientific community is they make a quadrat of like sometimes they're pre-made or they make them out of PVC and then they have a set surface area to measure. But just try to think of it that way. You have a little square that you're going to focus on if it's like a grouping of wildflowers and you can't see which stem belongs to which plant.
Great. Yeah, I am looking at the event we're having in Hillsborough County. So we are doing an event at the Tampa Family Health Centers. They have a community garden and doing a little entomology lesson followed up by the pollinator count. And it does say that it's sold out on Eventbrite. So I'll have to check with my partner here and check into that. But I know in Sarasota County, you guys are doing an event at Shamrock Park, correct?
Yes, and that is in South County in southern Venice. But you can also do this in the at your own house. Maybe you have a pollinator garden or a plant that really brings in the pollinators already. You just got to set aside 15 minutes and to complete that data sheet and then upload it when you are done. And we'll send out the websites and the resources we've talked about so you can explore those further and reference them.
Great. Well, that's all the questions we have. Thank you, everybody, for attending the webinar. And we'll send up a follow-up email soon. Joanne's asking if there's any events in Osceola County. I believe they are going to do one. So check with your UF IFAS Extension Center there or Ava Pavone and the Master Gardeners there.
And just a quick shout out for Lee County. Yes, we're also going to have some. They're just not up on Eventbrite yet.
Great, great. There's
The
going to be
same
in Lee
thing goes
County.
with Manatee County. We are going to do one. It's just not ready yet.
Great. Well, we got a little bit more than a month to plan, and there are going to be events statewide, and they are on the blog that we linked up here. So just check with the county near you and join in or do it at your own home. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.